Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to our next guest with Donna and Sandrine. This is a series, since it's still fresh out of the box, I need to give you a quick reminder and an intro on what we are all about. We will bring you the real stories behind the titles. We are inviting people from business to academia and everything in between, the bold moves they've made, the quick doubts they have, the surprising turns they made, and all those defining moments that help our guests earn their stripes. Each episode, either Sandrine or I will invite someone, either from our personal network, someone that was introduced to us, someone that we admire, someone with a story worth sharing. And today's guest was invited by Sandrine. They know each other very well, so I will be listening very closely to their stories and I will be getting to know our guest. And with this, I want to welcome Erik Gannon to our show. Erik, welcome.
Anna, thank you. It's nice to be here. And hello,
So let
Sandrine.
me, yeah, no, thank you, like Eric. I would love to give a glimpse of who you are, but we will dig in like much deeper after that. So let me introduce you. So Erik Gannon is the interim chief legal officer at Ancestry, but this is not like the focus that we will have for today's session. He's a rare example of someone who balances high stakes corporate leadership with deep personal authenticity, especially currently in a world that often values precision over presence, soul, and hard work. Eric brings creativity, spirituality, and humanity to the table. His journeys, and he will tell us more about it, offers powerful insights on staying true to yourself while leading within structure. Thanks a lot, Erin, for being here.
Thank you for those kind words, Sandrine. I should say they're all the things I try to do. I'm not promising that I do them every day, but they're certainly part of my objectives in how I go about living my life and my professional life.
Thank you.
Erik, actually, before we started, because we're going to give you this virtual stage. And one of the things that I always like to ask is, when you walk on stage, what would be your stage song? So we introduce you, you walk on stage, which song is playing and why?
That is a tricky question. You should have told me you're going to ask me, Donna.
There always
Let
has
me,
to be a
okay.
surprise.
Well, I'm a big fan of Bruce Springsteen. I think he's a
Nice.
great artist. So it'll probably be a Bruce Springsteen song, not because it necessarily signals anything particular, but he's just someone I've listened to my whole life. Yeah, I just think he's an amazing artist. And so why not walk onto a stage to a song that you really like, right? And which takes you back to various different times of your life. So yeah, let me think what track I'd go for. It's a tricky one.
You can think about it a little bit more if you
Probably
want to.
Dancing in the Dark.
Maybe.
Dancing in the Dark is a great.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I
Or
like
maybe
it.
by David Bowie, China Girl or something like that. Yeah. So I'm probably giving my
Nice.
away here as well. They're all songs from the 80s.
I like it too. Let's go for it. Eric, we know each other a little bit, as Donna mentioned, and throughout time, I discovered that we have like some things in common, especially like this sense of spirituality. Correct me if I'm saying something wrong, but from what I remember, you're vegan, you're into veganism, you have this openness like for mindfulness. And that comes to my first question. Can you share an experience where integrating your creative and your spiritual practices positively impacted your leadership?
Yeah, certainly. So when I think about spirituality, I don't really think of it, and I'm sure lots of people think about it these days, but I don't think of it in terms of any kind of religious kind of hearing or anything like that. Spirituality for me is really more about things that come from the heart as opposed to the mind. And as I've kind of gone along in my career, I've learned to kind of listen to that particular voice more and more. And it manifests in various different ways for me. It manifests in kind of listening to my instincts. I believe instinct is kind of a really important thing. And I've learned to trust that a little bit more as I've gone on in my life. Because I think through experience and certain circumstances that you go through, you sometimes, after you've come through them, you reflect on them and you say to yourself, I kind of knew that was going to go that way. Or there was some part of me that was telling me this was going to turn out like this, for good or for bad, right? So yeah, that's part of something which is not part of my kind of, frontal cortex in my brain, which is sending me these messages, this other kind of part of me. And for me, that's a kind of part of a kind of a spiritual thing. Also, when I think about that kind of spirituality kind of thing, it has also made me like for the vast bulk of my life, I was a total atheist, right? And I just didn't believe, I believed we were here and then we weren't here. And that was it. And then I can't remember what I was reading. I was reading some book on it, and I was kind of critical of that. And they kind of say that atheism was a kind of a dogma in its own way, right? It was, here's the absolute position, and for me, it's that there's no God and there's nothing else, and it's just science can't prove it, then it doesn't exist, kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I started to open up a little bit more when I thought about it like that, because I don't like dogma, whether it's religious dogma or atheist dogma kind of thing. And so that opened up a certain kind of part of me again, on the more spiritual side, which made me think about the fact that certain things could be possible, right? So that has kind of been a bit of a change in kind of who I am. And it's just kind of, I think it's made me more open, to be honest, and more open and tolerant, and I've had an ability to engage with different types of people, regardless of where they come from, and this political or the spiritual or whatever spectrum
Yeah.
it is you're thinking about. In terms of, I think you mentioned creativity as well, Sandrine, as
Yeah,
part of
there
that
is this
question.
sense of creativity.
Yeah, creativity and lawyers don't usually go hand in hand. I mean, certainly for you, Sandrine, you're from a very marketing background, and I always think about the marketeers that I work with. They're definitely programmed slightly different than the way my mind is programmed, when it comes to work. And creativity in the legal world, I suppose it takes its own form, right? We don't get to kind of manifested in the same way that when you're working on something, let's say like a new advert or a new campaign or something, you can be creative in a way that people can kind of see tangibly. But certainly in the lawyering world, a lot of what we do is really about problem solving. And when it comes to any problem solving, it's kind of like puzzle solving. You have to think about it creatively, because there'll be constraints to what you're trying to solve. And so you do have to kind of acknowledge those constraints, but then be aware of what your goal is and try to think about how you're going to bring this whole thing together. So when I think about, a lot of the time, and through a lot of my career, particularly the earlier part of my career, was spent on commercial contracts, right? And you're putting stuff together. And I always thought about those like a little bit like a jigsaw puzzle, where you're trying to take those pieces, put them into order so that it ends up with a coherent picture that everybody is kind of happy with. So yeah, so I suppose to come back to your question, creativity and spirituality, yes, they're definitely part of my life. And they evolve and change. But I don't, yeah, the creative stuff for me is kind of how I solve puzzles. And the spirituality side is this other voice within me, or this other thing that I've learned to plug into and listen to and engage with in myself as I've got older, basically.
Yeah. From what I'm hearing, and thanks a lot for highlighting that, is that it comes from intuition. It's like you are going inward, and that is fascinating, because nowadays, like, there is so much noise around us, and it's
Yeah,
like how you can tap into your inner wisdom. Interesting.
yeah, and that can be difficult in a world which, as you say, which is kind of so noisy, and which is, relentlessly on for us the whole time.
Yeah.
So I think you just got to try and make space in your life as well to let that happen for you. And be
I
honest.
like that. Yeah, I like that. I also think that something like this spiritual awakening comes with age, right? I mean,
Yeah.
as I've also gotten older, you just learn to respect things a little bit more, or put things in perspective, and just, grow into the bigger purpose of life without, necessarily looking at religion or, or things like that in that space.
Yeah,
I like how you framed that.
yeah, thank you. I've also become less judgy, Donna. I have
Yeah.
friends now from like a really wide spectrum, whether they're, politically from on the left or even, pretty far right. Like a lot of people want the kind of same kind of things in their lives. They want, opportunity, they want health, they want good things for their family, they want an opportunity to grow, and
Yeah.
better themselves. And so, yeah, regardless of where people are on those spectrums, I think when you get down to it, like vast majority of people just want the same things.
Yeah. True. True.
Yeah. I am getting curious, Eric, because before we started to record and to interview you, you told us a bit, or you teased a bit about your background story, and you are sharing now like your piece of wisdom about creativity in tapping into your intuition. And you have also this real openness for mindfulness and spiritualism. So my question down the line would be like, how did you land into this lawyer role or into the journey that you are now embracing?
Yeah, well, we probably have to run this session for about 2 hours to do that story just because it's pretty long. But yeah, like when I certainly don't have the very traditional. Well, I thought maybe I don't have what a lot of people would expect of a lawyer's background to be. Like when I was in school, like I was not good in school. I was very immature. Like I had no time for it, and I didn't kind of conventional education didn't really work for me that well. And so when I left school, like I left school in 1990, and in Ireland, you do this thing called the Leaving Cert. It's the last exam you do before you leave school. And depending on how many points you get in that determines what you can do in university or whatever. But anyway, I didn't get enough points pretty much for anything. So I landed out in Dublin in 1990 in, June or July in the middle of the summer. And I was like, what the hell am I going to do now? So for about 6 years, I did, and Dublin in 1990 was very different than what Dublin is now, right? There was very little opportunity. A lot of people of that age and my friends and peers would have emigrated and gone off to the US and UK and various different places to find opportunities. I didn't do that. I ended up staying. So I had lots of different jobs for those 6 years, working in shops, working as a security man, working as a bouncer, did all sorts of stuff. And then I got a job in the post room in the courts building in
Mm,
Ireland.
mm.
And it was sort of mail, it was a mailroom job. That kind of gave me my first insight into all things legal. And I used to,
Wow.
yeah, on my lunch break, I'd go and sit in and I'd watch trials, particularly murder trials.
Wow.
Murder trials are obviously, deal with serious things, but they're also very interesting things to watch, right? That's why everybody watches
Yes,
trials on TV, right? So I could just
absolutely.
of living them live. And then in order to kind of keep my mother happy, who was, worried about what I was ever going to do with my life, I agreed I'd do a diploma in legal studies at night. So it was kind of like 2 nights a week for 2 years. And so I started doing that, and it was like, I actually kind of like this, And it was the first thing kind of academically that I said, yeah, I'm actually not too bad at this. And so I did that for 2 years and liked it. And then I decided I was going to apply to do a degree in law. And we're lucky here in Ireland in that we have a mature student program where the government will effectively pay for your education and also give you a grant to help you get by and pay your rent and all that sort of stuff. So I mean, that is what a gift, right? Amazing, And it also that
Absolutely.
kind of thing then kind of really gave me an appreciation for education throughout the rest of my life and what education can do for people. Anyway, yeah, I applied and got into Trinity College here in Dublin, which is a great university right smack bang in the middle of Dublin City. I was there for 4 years. I was 24 when I started that course, and 24 was actually quite a good age to start it because, lots of your classmates are like 18 and 19 years old, but it's not like I was 50. So I kind of fitted in. They knew I was different and had, definitely more life experience than them, but I wasn't miles away from them. So it was good. I could still integrate and, at least make something of student life. And yeah, I really loved that. It was an amazing opportunity because it was I saw it as kind of like a second chance. Like I worked really hard. And I also then kind of really had to figure out how to study for, what was the best way for me to actually learn this stuff.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I managed to kind of, yeah, figure all that out, figure out a way which worked for me, did really well, got my degree. And then in the final year of my degree course, a lot of the law firms in Dublin are, going around and doing open days for students to invite them to join their firms. So I got a couple of offers from big law firms, joined a firm called Arthur Cox, really excellent law firm here in Dublin. I traineeship, then worked with them for about 3 years in commercial property. And then I had a bit of a melter, to be frank. My father had died in 2006. I was really, really close to him. That kind of when you suffer a loss like that in your life, it does definitely change your perspective and leaves an imprint on you. And so yeah, at about that stage, then I lost my way a little bit. Some part of me was like, I don't know if this working environment is right for you, because big private practice law firms are what they are, right? And they work for lots of people, and I have lots of good friends who've got amazing careers there. But there was something about it which was not very natural for me. And I didn't kind of know that at the time. It was only when ultimately I left it, I was like, wow, that was kind of stifling me a little bit. And so I reached this point where I decided, and when you go through loss and grief and stuff like that, they always say you should never make any big changes in your life when you're going through those processes because, you know, they can be difficult to make the right decisions when you're so emotionally charged, kind of thing. But
Yeah.
anyway, I didn't know at the time, and I decided this is not for me, and I literally just kind of quit, right? And definitely not recommending that as a way of guiding your career, but there was some part of me was just, you've got to get out of here. So I was no longer with Arthur Cox at that stage. I was doing something else. I'd made a couple of changes, and so I quit the law completely, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. Yeah, and so I was doing bits and bobs of all sorts of stuff for like 4 or 5 months. Then my money started to run out, and I was like, Christ, I need to get some more money, right? I was
Mm.
with a good friend of mine at the time, Alwyn, and she said, well, a friend of mine works in recruitment, and she's looking to hire a lawyer into telecoms, an in-house role with O2. And I was like, oh, I really don't feel, I'm not sure. And she said, well, at least talk to her. So I spoke to her, and she was very frank, and I was very frank with her. I was like, well, I don't really know if I want to do it or not, but maybe I'll have a chat with them, and if they want to meet me, and if they want to give me a shot, I'll give them a shot, kind of thing. So yeah, so I did that. I met them and thought that just sounds kind of interesting. Give it a go. And thought, well, I'll do a 3 month fixed term contract, which is what it was. Then I can take another 3 months off, and then we'll see where things go. But anyway, I get in there, and it was a completely revolutionary experience for me. The in-house world was just much more transparent. I remember, like, on my first week sitting there at my desk at about 5:30, and everybody gets up and goes home, and I'm like, what the hell are they doing? It's only like 5:30. Like a law firm, nobody goes home at 5:30. Well, some people do, but certainly the lawyers, you're still
Yeah, yeah.
on the clock, and you're putting up time. So then I kind of realized I'd been in this bubble for like, you know, best part of 10 years with other people who were in the same bubble. And that bubble was very closed. And then I suddenly found myself outside it. And I realized there was people who, for whom work was not the sole thing that they lived and breathed for. And
Mm.
so that was great to know, obviously. And so yeah, the 3 month thing became a 6 month thing, and then we got another 6 month contract, and that was kind of in a tricky time because economically Ireland was about 2008, 2009 at this stage. Economic crash at that stage, people were losing their jobs, and I was on these kind of
Yeah.
like fixed term contracts, which is very unnerving. But I managed ultimately to get a permanent gig there, and I stayed there for 6 years. And then yeah, and that was great. It gave me an opportunity to kind of move into a completely different area. I became much more of a commercial lawyer. I enjoyed working with sales teams, and particularly doing corporate sales, and that, like working with salespeople, I was just found really, really interesting. Because
Mm.
they have a very obvious objective. They want to make their sale. They want to close their sale. They want to hit their numbers by the end of the quarter and all that sort of stuff. But I got them, and I think they got me, and I could relate to them pretty well. So that was a really really enjoyable part of my career. And then I decided I was kind of done with it. And a friend of mine who you also know, Sandrine, Donald O'Brien from Ancestry, finance at P&A, great guy. He had moved to Ancestry about 6 months previously, and then I saw there was an ad for a job with Ancestry in 2012, and spoke to Don. He says, "Yeah, go for it. You'll probably do it for maybe 3 or 4 years, kind of thing, and you'll probably move on again." So applied for it. 10 interviews with Ancestry. Was like, wow, what's wrong with these people? Right?
Wow.
Wow.
Oh. Knowing the whole company.
Oh, I tell you, I thought it'd never end. Anyway, got the role, and that was fantastic. And I'm there, like Donald was saying, he'd be there 3 or 4 years. I'm there 12 and a half years now at this stage. And it has been an amazing environment for me. I've really thrived in it. It has changed a lot because, I mean, obviously you're not going to do the same thing for 12 years, right? But I was lucky in that just different opportunities opened up for me during my time there. So there was definitely a bit of luck involved. But at the time, I knew, like in 2012, I knew I needed to move from O2. And so,
Mm.
yeah, I followed my instincts. I listened to the voice and said, okay, time for the move. And I just felt good about Ancestry. And I still feel good about Ancestry after 12 and a half years, which is amazing. And yeah, my role
Fantastic.
changed and I've grown the team and all sorts of stuff in that time. It's been an amazing experience for me in that regard.
Amazing. And from what I'm hearing also is that, I mean, despite the fact that you wanted to move away from your career as a lawyer,
Yeah.
it came back to you.
Yeah,
So,
it did. It did.
yeah.
But in a
So,
very different way, and in a way which kind of just fitted me a lot better, you know? And like when
mm,
you think about what I said, like about, I've been in this bubble of people who are all chasing big law firm jobs, and then you get into that law firm and you wrap yourself up in that for a couple of years or whatever. Like breaking out of bubbles, I think, or at least having insight into different lives, I think is a really important thing. Like I still have some really good friends that I went to school with, for example, right?
yeah.
And, they went down completely different roads, right? And they didn't have, professional kind of careers like lawyers and doctors and accountants and whatever else. They had their own kind of paths. And I still meet them a couple of times a year, and they're completely outside the kind of lawyerly bubble, or even the tech bubble that I currently work in. Everybody's in certain type of bubbles at certain stages, and I think having exposure to people who do something completely different and who you can still have really good close relationships with, and you can plug into what they're doing in their lives and hear from them. And some of them have said things to me which are really insightful to me, like I'm like, bloody hell, and yeah, so they have different perspectives on lives which are really valid and really valuable. And so I think it's important to make space for those relationships and those conversations in your life, because you just never know what you're going to hear, which is going to be helpful to you.
You know what I really like about that story is that, so often people feel like they are stuck in a position. They are stuck in a role for whatever reason, right? Be it money, be it comfort. They just love being in that comfort bubble, I guess.
Yeah,
And what I really like about your story is how you just, you dared to take the chance to go do something else. You pretty much stayed true to yourself. Like, not feeling this, quit, go do something else. And I think that really helps us all, thinking about what gives your life purpose, what makes you happy.
yeah,
Because I think ultimately in the end, it's about, are you happy going to work every day?
big time.
You know, I always think if you're going to spend 8 hours at least in a job every day, those have to be the happiest hours you have. I mean, who would want to go to work not being happy? So I really love this story that you told, how you moved and how you changed and how you ended up where you are, because I think there are so many gems that we can take away from that story. Yeah, thank you for sharing that one. That's a really great story.
Thank you, Donna. It's when I look back on it, and you always look back, and when you look back, it's very easy to be kind of critical, right, on yourself. But whenever I've kind of told people in work, you just get the conversation, by tell them your story, kind of thing. I do say I'm not necessarily recommending this as a way to go, right? Because walking out and
Yeah.
now you're taking gambles, right?
Yes.
And not all gambles pay off, right? I mean, it was a tricky time to be out there taking gambles in your life.
Yeah.
May like, and again, very easy to hindsight, but for whatever reason at that stage, I didn't have the maturity or whatever it was to be able to see the problem coming, or to be able to acknowledge that I was a bit of a square peg in a round hole in these organizations, or that,
Mm,
and I should have, right? Because, you often talk to people who, come Sunday afternoon, that you get the fear, about your job on Monday morning, right? And that is your body literally telling you something, right? I do believe that.
yes.
This is
Yes.
your brain saying, because your brain says, oh, go to work, get money, all will be well, right? Whereas this other part of you is kind of rebelling. And so that physical sensation that probably we've all felt at some point, we're in the wrong place and the wrong job, and Sundays just get a little bit down and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, with greater maturity, maybe I would have acknowledged that, and I would have been ahead of the crisis point where I literally walked out. Right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I hope I don't end up in that situation again. I hope my voice and my intuition is guides me a little bit better, so you don't hit the point of crisis, and you can kind of manage
Yeah.
your career and manage your exit and just manage your trajectory in life in a little bit more
Yeah.
into organized way. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I like just the fact that, like you're in control. You remain in control of
Yeah,
your destination,
yeah,
right?
completely true. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, on that note, you were talking about about gambling. Experience help you nowadays, like navigate complex situation because that was a complex situation at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, good question. I suppose there's no kind of when you think about you're when you refer to kind of complex situations like that and the concept of taking a gamble, I think you can't wait for things to be perfect, right? So much of kind of what you do when you're in the workplace, there's an element of gamble about it. Some people are kind of more fearful of taking a chance where there's unknowns, right? Which is kind of what a gamble is, right? But you're never going to know everything and you're never going to be able to predict everything. And so for me, kind of like what I mentioned at the very start here, like about this kind of concept of instinct and, listening to your body as opposed to your brain a bit, that guides me a lot of the time in these complex, interrelated with different people, work situations. Because often it's the people who are the most complicated part of things. If you're just looking at facts and data and stuff like that, that's not going to react. That's not going to be emotional. That's just going to be what it is. And so for me, yeah, I really try and rely on that intuition, that sense of intuition, and to trust it, and also to know it's going to be okay. Not to be frozen by fear. It's not to say everything's going to work out hunky dory. It's totally not, right? But like, how bad is bad? Right. And getting comfortable. And this is the maturity thing as well. I think like the older you are, you also have more material kind of backup in life, right? You're not going to be on the street. You've got a home to go to or whatever. Whereas I think when you're younger, some of those gambles can have a more immediate kind of impact on your life. Whereas when you've got more support structures, whether they're material support structures or people support structures around you, it allows you to be a little bit more comfortable with the gamble and taking chances on things and being less fearful in how you approach some of these complex issues that you talk about, Sandrine.
Yeah, yeah, no,
So when you're talking about work, everything is very structured. It's well, you have a lot of responsibility being in legal. When you relax, I want to go back a little bit to this spirituality. When you relax and this mindfulness, what do you do? How do you de-stress and let go from work?
Well, as before we started recording this for everybody else, like swung my camera around out into my little garden here in Dublin, and I do a couple of things. Gardening is a big thing for me, for sure. And like I feel different when I walk out my back door into my garden. Honestly, like in the space of 60 seconds, I just feel it kind of, part of that stress and that world, that kind of corporate world just kind of fall away a little bit. And I can come out here and I can potter around is basically what I do. I'm not always all organized in what I do when I come out here. And maybe that's actually, now that I say it, is kind of part of it. Like the fact that there's no structure on what I'm doing here. I go from a structured world into I'm going to plant
Yes.
or I'm going to take up these weeds, and then I just go and I do it. And I can find myself. I can pass time in this garden like you wouldn't believe. I'd be saying, yeah, I'll go out now for 30, and 3 hours later, I'm still out there. So I have something I can do which I can lose myself in, right?
Mhm.
And I don't know where my brain goes even when I'm out here, right? I just do do.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just come out and stand here and I watch the birds eat the seeds out of the feeder. I just take joy in, these gorgeous little blue tits who are, feeding on the thing or whatever. So that's really good for me. A few years ago,
Yeah.
well, I started had a bad motorbike accident and it was not good. Anyway, I was recommended to start body work, right, which is what she referred to it as, which was yoga, basically. And so yoga I do too. And that again is something where, like, my brain, most of the time, sometimes your brain's just too busy and you just don't get there, right? But doing yoga is just definitely one of those things which just allows my mind to kind of forget about all that structure and corporate world and the pressures that comes with it. That won't be for everybody. Some people prefer to go out and play golf or whatever. That would kill me, right? If I were to go out and play golf. But I'd much prefer to go and do a yoga session between. Yeah, so there are things which are both of those things are things which are definitely very, very different from the corporate world and how the corporate world makes you feel. I do believe we all have a real innate desire to be in nature. There's a reason why pretty much everybody feels different after they go for a walk in the woods. It's not because we're
Yes.
imagining it, right? It's because we all feel different and better when we do that. Or when you pet a dog or you spend some time with an animal or something,
Hmm.
which are just far more natural to us. I think there's no doubt but that the way the modern world makes us work and live is quite artificial for us as human and things. So I try and do that. The other thing I do once a year is I go to Burning Man, which is my escape from the world for a week. It's out in the middle of the desert in Nevada. There's no cell phone coverage. No one can call me no matter what. And it is a place of total freedom and creativity and expression, and it's absolutely magical. And I encourage you both to go. And I've said it to you, Sandrine, and I'll say it to you again. You definitely got to go there. Right?
Yes,
You got to make
I
space
mean,
for it. Now, it's not an easy thing to do, right? It's in a very challenging environment, but that's all part of it, you know. And it
how
is.
challenging is that? Sorry to interrupt you, because it feels to me really bubbly, spiritual, inviting,
Yeah,
inclusive.
it's all of those things. But I have to say, one of the things that I find most joyous and most attractive about it is the sense of play, right, that comes with it.
Mm.
And it's in a really big area, so you're on your bike. You got to have a bike with you the whole time. And yeah, certainly from when I started going, I said, God, I forgot what it was like when we were like 7 years old and you hopped on your bike and you went out with your friends. That's what you did. There was no structure to the day, really. Someone might have a football or, you might go somewhere on your bikes, but that was kind of it, right? And I managed to find that sense of play again, right? Whereby you go out and you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And you're going to find some other kids out there who you're going to play with, right? And they're going to be doing something and you're going to join in. And that sense of genuine play and lack of structure to the day is an amazing thing to feel again as an adult, particularly when you spend
Yes.
the other 51 weeks of the year within, a corporate environment, which is very structured. You can predict, I can look at my calendar and my whole day is predicted. I know exactly what's going to happen at 5 o'clock, right? Whereas when you're there, you've no idea what's going to happen in 5 minutes time, never mind at 5 o'clock, right? So yeah, that gives me a great opportunity once a year just to completely blow off steam and to go out there and put myself into an environment where you just don't know what the hell is going to happen.
Nice. Yes, I can feel there is like a sense of unpredictability, and
But yeah.
also it can be, I don't know, I mean, I've never been, and we talked about it, and I'm super curious, and I heard about Burning Man, Africa Burn. From what I'm hearing also is that it can be unsettling for someone like you're saying, me too, like putting a lot of blockers, having like your whole agenda, and then like, okay, you need to go with the flow, like to
Mm.
deconstruct your day to day. How does this is how it feels like when you
Yeah.
experience such a thing?
You're completely right, Sandrine. And initially, it's very challenging. Like, we usually go for a week, right? We go from Saturday to Saturday.
Yeah.
And by Monday, I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? I have to leave.
Wow.
How did I come back here again? How can I make this mistake again? Right. And then you kind of get over the hump, right? So there is this, I think of it like as deflation, right? You come in and you're all
Hmm.
worked up, you've come out of this world, and then all of a sudden, bang, you're into this environment where all the rules are different, and there's no money, and there's no shops, and there's nothing normal about it. And so, yeah, like I have found myself like literally by Monday or Tuesday, like crying because I'm like, what's going on? But it's somewhat cathartic in a certain way, right? It's like, and the more I've had those experiences several times, not just once, and I kind of almost know it's coming at a certain point. But that's it. Like for me, it's like the point. It's the point of it's like the point of catalyst.
Yeah.
It's certain stuff coming out of me, and now I become lighter once I've had that kind of moment, and I get over it, and I properly get into the flow. And by the end of the week, like honestly, yeah, you feel like a different human. Like it's bizarre, and
You
it's
just have to let it happen.
you just have to let it happen. You have to let go, right? And that is
Yeah.
challenging, right? There's no doubt about it. But like not having a cell phone there and not being contactable and the harshness of the environment, they're actually all things which really help you do that. And you're surrounded by 60 or 70,000 other people who are similarly motivated, right? And so Yeah, it grabs you, it shakes you, it shakes the external world out of you a bit, and then you're just kind of left to try and yeah, just go out and experience the place. And I go there with a group of amazing friends, and to be able to spend a week with your friends is right kind of special. Not many people get to do that, right? You might get a night out here or there, but to be, we rent an RV, do it nice. So to be able to spend that time with your friends in that environment,
Yeah.
honestly, I feel like I nearly have to do it every year because it just allows me feel more like myself, and it gives me sustenance to
Mm.
come back into the default world and do my thing and yeah, get back into the swing.
Yeah. Someone once told me, I haven't been, but yeah, definitely on my bucket list. But someone once told me that although it looks like it's completely free and, everything is possible, that there is some structure, there are some rules, and there is sort of like a playbook of Burning Man. Have you experienced that? Because is it really as free as we all think that haven't been, or is there some organized chaos?
I won't say it's organized chaos. No, I mean, there's definitely things you're not allowed to do. So, like, they put a fence around it, right? So, but the fence from one end of the fence to the other is like 7 kilometers across, right? So you're in this really,
Yeah.
and there's rangers and there's police there, right? So it's not a total anarchistic kind of place where
All right.
everything goes, but most things go.
Oh, yeah.
There's a bit on the back of the ticket when you get it, which says safety third. It's not that health and safety is first or second, it's third, right? And I really like that because,
Hmm.
health and safety is often a good excuse
Yeah.
not to have fun, right? And so,
Yeah.
like, you can go out to Burning Man, you can do stuff and you can climb up and stuff and you can fall off and hurt yourself, but that's on you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Real libertarian kind of atmosphere. It's definitely small government or possibly no government.
Mm.
There is a kind of structure there, Donna, but by and
Yeah.
large, it's here's this huge area of desert. What are you going to do with it?
Mm.
Right.
Challenging question, like, because it's like, oh God, I don't know what to do. And you see all these other people and they're really cool and they have these amazing camps, and you feel, oh, I don't know where I fit in here, right? Well, you kind of do
Right.
find your place, and there's all sorts of people there. Like honestly, there are all sorts of people there, and so
There's no judging, though. I mean,
now.
everyone is just their
Yeah,
self.
yeah. The only people who get judged are really the Instagrammers and they're
Of
judged by
course.
everybody
Of
else for
course,
being
yes.
Instagrammers. So they're trying to improve their number of followers or whatever by taking cool pictures of Burning Man. But like they're a
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
tiny, tiny minority people who are there. Most of the other people who are there are people just like us, people who are
Mm.
just looking for something different in their lives and give this a go. And so I would say don't put it on your bucket list. Most people have bucket lists, and bucket lists are populated by things they're never actually going to do. They're just thinking about doing. So I challenge you, Donna,
Not me.
take it off your
Not my
bucket list
bucket
and put it
list.
on your doing list.
I'll put it on my short-term list. Do
Good.
this year list.
Yeah, and now somebody knows you've no excuse. I repeat, yeah, my
Exactly.
invitation to you, and I extend it to you, Donna. You ever want to get out there? We've got a good
Obviously.
camp. We've got it surrounded by good people, and we know how it works, which is very helpful.
Yeah,
Writing it
Eric,
down as we speak.
Good.
exactly. Noted. Eric, what I love about what you're saying is also like finding comfort in discomfort, and
Mm.
also that you're trying, like not trying, it's like genuinely you're curious about challenging yourself, and there is like this growth mindset about you. And what interests me, like based on your experience, like with Burning Man, with yoga, with gardening, is how do you integrate like those unconventional way of thinking into how does that contribute like to a problem solving structured environment that we just described before?
Yeah, sometimes it's an uneasy fit, Sandrine.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I remember doing these Myers-Briggs personality tests.
Yeah.
It was myself and 7 or 8 other lawyers there, and all of them were American lawyers, and they came out with scores which showed they were you know um, highly not competitive. What's the other word? But kind of. They were very driven. They were very, they enjoyed challenge and all of those things. I'm not describing this very well, but anyway, they had
Yeah, they
kind of.
were striving, pushing
Yes,
boundaries,
exactly. They
probably.
had traits. They had traits about them which you would naturally attribute to a lawyer, right? And for
Mhm.
all good, right? My top score was like harmony, and they were looking at me like harmony, like that's a weird one for a lawyer to have, right? Um,
Yeah.
Harmony for me is really important, and I remember thinking, oh, I could see them almost looking at me, thinking, "Christ, you can't be much of a lawyer if you're all about harmony, right?"
Right.
But like the truth behind like a lot of negotiations and deals like that is that really what you're striving to get is harmony between both sides. People can live with a deal or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
there was a different angle to it that was which maybe it's just because it was my trait that I thought was actually very helpful. So yeah, there was
Yeah.
that to it. But when you come back to, I suppose, a little bit more directly to that question, yeah, sometimes it's just a really difficult fit to kind of bring those things into your world, and you can try and find opportunities to do it. Like part of my role with Ancestry is head of the Dublin office as well, right? And you're responsible for things like the Christmas party or the summer party or whatever, right? And so when I think about my Burning Man experience and when we talk about that sense of play and that sense of freedom and stuff, when we're organizing events, myself and I have an amazing EA called Sarah, who's just great at organizing stuff, but we work really well together because I bring some of these. Sometimes my thoughts might be a little bit extreme and they're not going to fit really within the corporate world, right? But you can still take elements of them and that sense of, well, what's just going to be really great, as opposed to trying to follow a conventional route and saying, yes, let's do, something more predictable. So I do try and think
Mm.
of things in that part of my leadership role, which are kind of less predictable and which are a little bit different, and which, for the most part, have gone really, really well. People are like, oh, this is kind of different, and if you can create a good vibe,
Mm.
people will pretty much go along with anything. So yeah, in the more kind of world of documents and corporate law and tax and all that sort of stuff, it's very different.
Mm.
The truth of it is that I think that you can have these different elements to your personality and these different insights, but we all have to agree to kind of exist within the world. I'm covered in tattoos and stuff like this, but I still cover them up, right? So there's no corporate world in which you live in which you can totally just be yourself and just rock up in a t-shirt and shorts and go into the board meeting, right? You still gotta play to the rules to some degree. But I think finding a role that allows you to bring enough of yourself to the role to not feel suffocated, and to allow you to be yourself and not get the Sunday fear, which I mentioned earlier, is the key. There's always sacrifices to be made. It's never all going to be, sunshine and rainbows, right?
I see.
The world is the way it is, and we might wish it's somewhat different, but we got to fit within it at the same time, but to the right degree and without sacrificing too much of yourself. I think is really important.
That's great advice for anyone listening going into, that direction.
Thank
I
you.
think that's really great advice. A great takeaway from this session. Absolutely.
Thank
I
you.
love it. I think we
Mhm.
could go like on and on and on. And I see that like the time is ticking. If I may ask, because you were talking about, yes, being authentic, or you said like to bring your whole self at work. It's unfortunately sometimes like really challenging and we need like to wear masks or layers. And that's part of the game also, like
Yeah.
the play. But you as a leader, how do you encourage like your team members like to bring their whole selves at work and to show them that there might be benefits also in their day-to-day job?
Um, yeah, really good question. There's a couple of things. The hiring part is really key to that. Hiring is tricky because you want diversity within your team, right? But it's also you also want a degree of, to go back to that word again, harmony, right? So like everybody who works on the international legal team, we're all more like friends than colleagues, right? And I think they think about me like that too, right? Even though I'm kind of their boss, right? But it's a very it's a very relaxed atmosphere, you know, that there's a lot of safety within it, that people feel they can be who they are. And that's encouraged, I suppose, in various different ways. Like one of the things I always kind of say to new starters when I'm giving them the pep talk at the start is that I don't mind if people make mistakes, right? I genuinely don't.
Mhm.
In fact, I actually almost welcome it, because when you look back in your own career, you look back things you made a mess of, like you learn so much. You know, you can't be completely safe and you never make any mistakes, because then you're just going to be, you know, you're not going to be half as developed as someone who has. So hiring good people, creating a sense of, you know, nobody's looking for you to be perfect in this world. Bad things are going to happen, and we're all going to get over them together. Just come and tell me, and we'll figure it out. Sharing some of your own mistakes that you've made in your own world yourself.
Mm.
And, you know, I go to Burning Man, for example, as we just talked about, and I tell them about it when I come home, right? Other people might think, oh gosh, if I tell my staff I went to Burning Man, they'll think I'm some crazy hippie, you know. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm a crazy hippie in some ways, but like being okay, right? But I also work in a company which allows that, right? So I'm not like this
Yeah.
one-off
Yeah.
trying to do this one thing. Like I'm part of a culture which kind of allows that to flourish, right? And it's part of the reason I still work there after 12 and a half years.
Mhm.
Because there is that freedom within it. And it's not just me, it's the broader culture within the company as well, which resonates with me and then allows that to flow into other people I work with as well. And
Yeah.
allows them to feel comfortable for who they are. So yeah, so it's part of an ecosystem which contribute to,
Yeah.
but which is definitely bigger than me.
Yeah, thanks a lot for sharing. Yeah, you embody or you inhabit also like those culture
Yeah.
values. Thanks a lot. Donna, anything else you would like to add?
I have just been listening to you, Erik, and I like how you've told your stories. I like what you've shared about your experience, how you got to where you are, how you relax, how you know, how you stay true to yourself. So there are so many lessons in what you've shared. So first of all, thank you for that. And I think you've touched on so many topics that I think, you know, this new generation that is now going into this corporate world or that is looking at their purpose in life. I think there are so many gems in there that they can take away. So thanks for sharing that. And thanks for being such an amazing storyteller. It's been a joy listening to you. That's what I can say.
Well, thank you very much, Donna. I appreciate your kind words, and yeah, it's been a really good conversation. And thanks for probing me with all those questions. It definitely makes me think about things, and I'll be reflecting on them after this conversation as well. And when you get to your first 1 million subscribers, I'll come back for a small fee, and we can have another conversation.
That's a deal.
But you got to
That's a
get
deal.
1 million subscribers first, then I'll come back. Right? So that's
But thanks a lot, Erik, for taking this conversation to another level and
no problem.
also showing and proving that like soul and structure can coexist. And as Donna well said, that was highly inspiring. And thanks a lot for coming as you are and to share your piece of wisdom. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much, Sandrine. Thank you, Donna.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.